everyone. It's so good to be back for the Digital Fashion Innovators series here on LinkedIn Live. My name is Marie Bastian. I'm the CEO and founder of World of Mesh. And I'm your host for today's session. And as usual, this whole new era of digital fashion is bringing together amazing talents from all around the globe. And we're excited to not only bring them, inspire them with our content, but also to bring them on our platform and to hear their stories. And today's one of these days where I have a really special guest for us, actual next generation fashion designer. Paola is with us today. And I just want to say before we get started, of course, all our guests are speaking on behalf of themselves and not for the companies they work at. And to all you listeners out there, as usual, make sure you add your questions in the comments. Feel free to also share where you're all joining us from. We're always interested to see who's jumping on our session. And one more thing before we start, I just want to celebrate and highlight that we had 135 people signing up for the session today. I mean, last session we had Novan from New York. It was like 120 people. Now it's 135 with Paola from Germany. Hands up for that. Really, really glad to see the content is on place and on spot, and that you guys are taking value out of this, because that's what it's all about. Amazing. So I'd like to welcome my guest for today. Enough talking. Hi, Paola. Paola Olaguivel. We're so glad to have you on today.
Thank you, Marie. So my name is Paola Olaguivel. My nicknames are Loa or Pao, if you kind of think that the name's a little bit difficult, because it is quite a long name. I was born in Bolivia and moved to Germany when I was around 9 years old. So I have the two cultures inside of me. I live in Germany now, so I still live in Germany. I kind of stayed, even though the weather is not so nice.
Definitely better where you're coming from.
That's true. Like, the dream is to be like half, right? To have always summer. But fun fact about myself, as a child, I always wanted to be a game designer. So I was kind of inside my room and always thinking about games and drawing game characters. So that was kind of my dream job. But I never knew anyone that was from that world. So it was very, very far away from me. So one day I bought a fashion illustration book. And that's when I decided, okay, fashion, I wear it every day. So I will do a bachelor in fashion.
The closest to the game designing.
Well, maybe, I don't know. But I never forgot about 3D. I mean, for me, it was always very, very interesting to create things with computers, think about smart design and all the materials that you have. 3D printing was a super exciting thing to see. And I never knew about Pro 3D, so I always thought that digital fashion was made with Blender. So that's why I was like, okay, no, I'm never going to be able to do dresses with Blender because it's very, very difficult.
Yeah.
And so it was always in my mind with AR, with the Instagram AR filters, right? I was always imagining how it would be nice to have fashion filters for your body and those kind of things. And then, around 2018, I went through like a self-healing journey. I was leaving things in the past and trying to live in the now, trying to figure out my purpose in life. What do I really want?
Very important.
And during that journey, everything happened. So one day my sister messaged me and told me, did you see? And I was like, what? And then I followed the link. And it was about that the first digital fashion dress was sold through the blockchain. And that for me, I mean, it was May 2019. I'm never going to forget that day because it was like, oh my God, it is happening now. Like, I have someone to follow because I never had that, right? You always have to kind of surround yourself with people that are ahead of you in the game. And that was kind of my point where I realized, okay, I have to jump on the train. Otherwise, I'm going to miss it because it's now, like, it's happening.
Yeah.
And so I decided to do my master's degree in fashion, in traditional fashion, because there wasn't really a digital fashion course back then, like a proper fashion course. Yeah. So I applied again to my old college in Germany, in the south of Germany, in Trier, a very small city, also where Marie studied. So that's why we know each other as well.
Yeah, there was a connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So So, and I was very excited about it because, like, how do you explain a very traditional fashion college that really teaches you how to sew clothes and do perfect patterns? How do you explain them that you want to go digital? So I was very worried about that. But then I feel if you kind of make the right decision for yourself, everything kind of comes together like a little puzzle. So every decision kind of leads to good things.
Absolutely.
So a fashion professor started that was implementing digital fashion 3D, kind of that direction. So I was like, oh my god, like I don't have to even explain it to them because he was obviously on board.
Yeah.
He also lived in Berlin, which was great because during that time I was living in Berlin, so I knew that I didn't have to go back to Trier the entire time, so just only sometimes. And then the pandemic happened, and that was, I mean,
And
not
it
so
hit us
great for
all.
yeah, not so great for a few people, but for me it was perfect because that meant that I don't have to move to Trier at all. Like I can stay in Berlin and do everything in Berlin. And all the professors, they were like, "Oh no, I don't want you for you to do it online. You have to come to Trier." Suddenly, they had to allow it because it wasn't possible. Everyone had to stay at home and do everything digital. So that was a great thing that happened. And then also the great thing was that everyone was in front of the computer. So it was very easy to get in contact with companies and with other fashion designers and digital fashion designers. So my first steps into that world was through the Fabric and Twitch streams. So every week they streamed, I think 2 or 3 hours, and they shared everything about the progress, what projects they're doing. So I had like such a great picture of someone that is already working in that field.
Yeah, having that role model, right? Someone you can actually follow who's taking those first steps.
Yes.
So important. That makes such a difference, right?
Yes, totally. And so it was such a nice community because we were only like 20 people every week. So we kind of all knew each other. And I learned about NFTs. So that was kind of like the first times that I heard about NFTs. And then also Clubhouse was a big thing back then.
Oh yeah, that popped up and disappeared quickly, right? It was
I
like
don't use it anymore, yeah. But it was quite interesting because it was the first time that people actually interacted with each other, right? It wasn't that much in Instagram or YouTube or those things. It was always like one-sided. But with Clubhouse, it was like a huge discussion between a lot of people, which was actually great.
Yeah.
And there I found Emma from Digital X. So she's the pioneer of digital fashion in terms of crypto.
Yeah.
So she created a community around crypto and digital fashion, and she really took us by the hand and explained to us everything about decentralization, everything about the blockchain. She taught us how to use the MetaMask. We all didn't know what a MetaMask was. We were like, how does it work?
Yeah, that's I think the biggest step, right? Setting up your wallet, figuring all of that stuff. And fun fact, actually, Digitalix actually reached out to me too during that time if I wanted to join the community. So I was so tempted because I love what she did such an amazing job. Like really, I'm totally in awe of that woman power. She did it all by herself, building that up. But I just had to focus on World of Mesh then, so I skipped that one. And I was like, oh, that would have been really great. So continue. I don't want to interrupt you. Just a fun fact. It's good to hear about it.
Yeah, but everything on your own kind of pace. That's why it is quite difficult also for me to like say no to things, like especially when I started working, to say no to other projects. It's quite
especially
difficult,
now. There's thousands of things popping up, right? It's like it's really hard.
Yeah, you have to decide. Otherwise, you do like 1,000 things and you don't do nothing at all. Like not really. You don't really go into the deep of anything.
Setting boundaries, guys. That's important.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
Yes,
it's
absolutely.
difficult but necessary. Yeah. So that's where I really jumped into the NFT game. So we did NFTs. I created digital fashion as NFTs for the first time. So, and we were all very successful because it was also during the bull time of crypto. Which bull time means is that everyone was investing, like everyone was buying, everyone was interested in crypto and in digital fashion.
Yeah.
So every day something new happened. Every day a new token popped up, a new a new blockchain popped up, which was always very crazy for us because we were so new in this space, and every day something new happened.
A real gold rush, I remember.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was like a gold rush.
Yeah.
That's a good word for it. So it was an amazing time. Like I don't want to miss that time. It was very, very great.
And so
And
cool
it
that you had
was
that community to go through it, right? To work your way through all these new tools and technologies popping up left and right. I think that makes a huge difference, right?
it does make a huge difference, and you don't have that in physical fashion. Like you really don't. The way people are open to other people and are not afraid of sharing information and helping each other it's just great. So yeah, that was also
Yeah,
a very it is a very strong contrast to physical fashion, although it's changing, and there are great fashion companies as
absolutely.
well, but
It's a
in
totally different
general,
culture. And
yeah,
I'm so glad they're merging because that's what we need. That's what we need to
totally.
make the difference. We need to be more sharing, more open.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good point.
Yeah, so I used all of that I was learning during that time for my master thesis. So I did a product development thesis. I didn't do like a proper fashion collection. So I did a thesis about how you can actually make money as a student with digital fashion, which everything worked out because I sold all my NFTs. So it was like obviously a great time.
Yeah.
And then it was the time where I had to decide because I wanted to be a freelance Web3 designer, right? That was kind of the goal.
Hmm.
And then I did a few projects and I realized two things. One was that I was missing the human connection because I was in my room the entire time. I did go out a few times, but I was working in my room on my own with all
I
my
didn't go much
digital
out during
friends.
COVID.
Yeah, yes, well, okay. Yeah, a lot of us.
Yeah.
But I kind of wanted to have like actual
Mm.
physical human interaction because it is
Yeah.
different. I mean, online is great and you do build a lot of deep connections, but it is different when you actually can
Yeah.
feel something and like can feel someone, right? The energy of the person.
Absolutely.
So that was one thing, and the other thing was that I was hearing a lot in the talks that you cannot implement digital fashion into physical fashion. So everyone was like, "Yeah, it's a great tool to like design and maybe for small designers, but it doesn't really work for production." And I was like, "Huh, okay." Like I couldn't really say anything about it because I didn't know.
Yeah.
So I am still very interested in that to really find out how to implement, if it's possible, is it possible or is it not possible to implement Clo 3D into physical fashion, or not only Clo 3D. I work with Clo 3D, but by now there are a lot of other programs. But digital fashion into really physical production, like of a proper fashion collection.
I can say yes. I've seen it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely. It's possible. It's possible. It's a lot of
Yes.
work. I mean, it's one thing designing something 3D and having a
Mm-hmm.
visual, and it's the other thing having a single source of truth, a digital garment that goes through from the first beginning of having the idea, the concept
Mm-hmm.
phase, all through that process to the production to the consumer.
Yeah.
It's a whole nother story, and there's definitely more time and efforts and resources needed, but it's possible.
Yeah, it is possible, and it's getting better every day, right? Like we are
Yeah.
learning every day something new. So yeah, that's how I landed again in the physical world, and I decided to work for a physical fashion company in Germany. I stayed in Germany. So I moved to a very little village in the middle of nowhere and work as a physical, like as a 3D product developer for fashion
Mhm.
now. And I am in between the pattern makers, the designers, the marketing team, and we are kind of using 3D as a new language to
Yeah.
actually produce the physical fashion collections,
Mhm.
and it does work. Materials are a big problem, but a lot
Yeah, the
of it
materials
already
are
works.
the most important asset, I would say, of those libraries because they're the makers or breakers. They make something look hyper realistic or really flat, but
Hmm.
they also make pipelines work really good or really mess up, depending on
Yeah.
the qualities, the setups, and everything. So yeah, digital fabric is a big
Hmm.
point.
Yeah, and what I'm also noticing it that now is like I never really noticed it before because I was obviously just doing digital fashion. But the gravity in the programs is different, right? Like they mimic our gravity in the physical world, but it doesn't. It's not always the same. So fabrics kind of move differently, and for fitting,
That's true. Yeah, you're right.
it's quite important to have like the
Yeah.
fall of the actual fabric in the physical world. So that is not 100% working now, especially when you have like very flary fabrics with like a lot of ruffles that are away from your body and they're like
Yeah,
flowing
like a
around.
chiffon or something like that.
Exactly. So yeah, those things are obviously not working yet. But I mean, Clo 3D exists since 2010, I think, right? Marvelous designer.
Yeah, I think
So
2000. I think 2009 even.
2009 even.
2010 is the first time I think I opened it. And was there for a year, about something like that. Yeah.
That's so cool. Like I can't even imagine how it was back then because it must
Yeah.
have been rough.
You were just talking about because like you mentioned, we're at the same university, and you were telling about your your steps and how you were so glad to have some guidance on board who can lead you through that process. And it was very different for me too, because I was a few years even before that. And I know that I got a professor with me on board for my master thesis
That's so
for
cool.
architecture. So someone actually uses 3D tools. So it's very unusual to have like multiple professors on your thesis, but I got him on board. I went to the courses and I tried to get that knowledge I was hungry for from all sides. And he was amazing. That was Mati Schroth, by the way. Also, Dirk Wolfes supported me. They were both a really great support, and it was a great time. But yeah, like you said, it's like trying to figure things out all on your own is a tricky one.
It is, yeah. Totally, yeah. But I mean, yeah, it's also fun. Also, the community helps with that, right? Because you can always like ask them, like, okay, what do I do? Like, how does that work? Because when I started as well, I started quite late. But on YouTube, there weren't a lot of tutorials. There were just very little amount of tutorials.
Yeah.
So you really had to try out and see if it works or not. But if you go now on YouTube, you find literally everything, and you find libraries full of clothes that are already done. Like you don't even have to start from the beginning. You can just use what is already there, which is
Absolutely
nice. Yeah.
Yeah,
How
it's
did
really.
you?
Yeah, you go.
Oh, sorry. How did you find out about Clo 3D like already that early?
So that's an interesting story. I can share it real shortly because this is actually about you.
Yeah, sure.
But it's a fun one because I remember walking down the hallway. We had these paper boards, on the side where they had like courses hanging out and stuff. And there was a course on paper printed hanging there of character designers, because in our same building we had also gaming design and interactive design.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so they had a character design course for designing, gaming characters.
Yeah.
And there was a software, Clo 3D, they were using. I was like, I'm going to sign up there. I'm not getting any points, not any credits, but this sounds really interesting. And I remember seeing it the first time. And back then, Clo 3D wasn't quite there yet. It didn't have the amazing pattern tools we have now to make pleats and all these stuff, And for me, it was just mind blowing to, as a physical designer, knowing how long it takes to create a nestle, these prototypes, creating the pattern on paper, sewing it together, putting it through the ironing press and everything, and repeating that like 5 times, and then just seeing it stitched together in the program within 3 hours. That was like, I mean, that's where my love started, but that's enough for that. So
yeah, very interesting to know.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just wanted to summarize your journey you just shared. So you actually started your journey with this whole 3D knowledge in your pack, and you started in this Web3 world as a fully digital immersive artist, actually, right? And you then took that leap back actually from this super advanced Web3 world, all these amazing technologies and figuring things out on the fly. You decided actually to take the step back and go to a more traditional Web 2 fashion company to actually support them and help our industry move forward, right? That's pretty amazing. That's something I think we both also have in common, which I can totally relate to, and I'm so glad to hear that. But that's an important point. It's not, and these are the moments where you can really tell it's not about doing cool stuff or just having nice visuals or being advanced and front running. you're thinking about the industry. You're thinking about how can you share your knowledge? What can you bring to the table to help us move in the right direction? Because we have a lot of challenges we need to figure out, right? And if the few advanced people just jump a leap forward and jump into this Web3 space, the others won't be able to catch up that quick. So I think it's great that you took that step to bring them along.
It's a lot of fun. I didn't leave the Web3 world. I'm still working there.
Yeah, but you're putting your hand in the back and saying, "Hey guys, come on, this is cool."
Yeah, that's true.
Inspiring for sure. Also, I'm sure that you have you're having conversations you're maybe not even aware of at work, that you're just getting people to think, inspired, to have fun, and joining the 3D fashion journey. It's a big influence. Maybe we can also, because we talked a lot about Web 2 and Web 3 now, and I always like to sprinkle in some definitions to also educate people out there. So maybe we can jump in right there and talk a little bit about the difference of Web 2 and Web 3 focused companies, maybe also. Like, what's the difference there? How can we define that?
Yes, with Web 2 and Web 3 companies, so we really have to be aware that we are in the beginning of everything. Like Web 3 just started, like in the 2000s, so we are very, very new. So it's very difficult to really define who is Web 2 and Web 3, because at the end of the day, we are all living in a centralized world and we cannot just leave it. So when you do your research and when you start going back, you're going to notice that kind of almost every company is still very centralized, still very Web 2, how you would call it. So it's a nice thing to know what the difference are from the internet, like what is Web 1, what is Web 2, what is Web 3. And then from there, you can, do your own research and decide what company you think is Web 2, what company you think is Web 3, which company you want to support and which you don't want to support, maybe, or don't. Maybe you are still a fan of Web 2, like, it doesn't always have to be just one-sided, just black and white. There are a lot of
some are also titling a Web 2.5 now. The in-between. I've seen that around.
The in-between stuff. Yeah, that's also a thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but I agree. Yeah, it's hard to define, right? Because there's a lot of in-between gray zones. Some that have their feet in both worlds.
Yes, totally. So I can tell. So Web 1 is kind of the start of the internet. I would say like around the 70s. It was the beginning of the internet. It was very open source, so everyone was sharing everything, but it was very static. So you only you could create a homepage, but you couldn't really interact with it, right? So it was only kind of read. You say Web 1 was like the read internet. And then so Web 2, it was like around the 90s, and that's kind of the read and write internet, because you could actually interact with the internet for the first time. So big companies like Google and Facebook and all of those companies
that's when they all popped up.
Yes, that's at the time when it happened, and they all stole from all the small companies they were working on those projects, right?
Yeah.
So they took the power of our data, because they created products that had a very, very nice interface, and they won against all the smaller companies. So and then when I think 2008, the apps were developed for phones, and that made everything much easier. So the social internet was born. So we could interact with each other, we could share things, to imagine that we can book restaurants, like we can actually go into the internet, search a restaurant everywhere in the world, and you can book your appointment in the restaurant like in no time. And when they were introducing those ideas in Web 1, or during that time, during the 90s, everyone was like, no, like, are you crazy? Like, how are you going to jump into the internet and kind of see the world? It was so far away, like no one could understand what the internet was going to be. And so that was Web 2. Everything was possible suddenly, but we lost power of our data, right? And we still don't have it back. And so that's where Web 3 comes in. So, and also it's important to know that Bitcoin, the blockchain, was possible suddenly, right? Because there were a lot of tryouts with other blockchains, but it never worked out. So Bitcoin was the first one that actually worked out in 2008. And then with Ethereum in 2015, everything was possible suddenly. Everyone was like, yes, we can create a new internet. We can gain back the power of our data. And
ownership, the big topic here.
Ownership is the right word. And we don't need those companies anymore to be in between us. Like I can do my own transactions now. Like I don't need to have Instagram or Facebook in between of me. I can just do it on my own. I don't need to have PayPal in between of me. I can just do it on my own. I can sell my own things in a very secure way without knowing the person on the other side. So that's
Anonymous.
kind of the whole thing. So I hope that I could explain it well. I'm not sure.
No, that's really that. No, I love that you also took the first step of Web 1 actually into that. That was a really, really nice summary. And this Web 3 space has so many like great attributes because every Web 3 project is all around community building, right? Having that sense of community and working together on something and bringing people along on the journey, and not having this central, like an organization, you have a pyramid, you have a CEO at the top, and then you have your upper management leadership teams, and then down, the pyramid to the working, executing employees. That's something that doesn't really exist in the Web3 space. It's all there's low hierarchies or no hierarchies. People are sharing, collaborating and working together. And it's just such a good influence coming into our fashion industry, like you said in the beginning, into a fashion industry that has a culture of a lot of elbows and don't look at my idea. This is, it is a very competitive industry, the fashion industry. And I just love how that's coming in. So how now we talked about the differences of Web 2 and Web 3. And so we also talked about how you're moving while you're also still pushing forward on Web 3 initiatives. You're still supporting Web 2 brand. How do you navigate between these two worlds? How do you try to stay on top of both worlds and somehow bridge between them?
Yeah, very interesting question, because at the beginning, when I started to work for a physical fashion company, it was quite difficult because I grew up in such a decentralized world with all the fashion, with the Web3 community. So I was like, oh, now I'm on a centralized company. Like, how am I going to figure that out? So I was like really thinking a lot about that. But I do really believe in that sustainability aspect of it. Like, I really want to help fashion companies to reduce their overproduction.
Yeah.
Is that the right word? Yeah. Because we obviously have to change, right? Like, I was in Milan with you a few weeks ago, and I was walking through like the main street, and I saw people with like 20 Primark bags. And that shocked me so much, also because I don't do a lot of shopping. But I was like, what do you want to do with like so many clothes that are not sewn very well? Like, you're going to throw them away a few months later. So we cannot keep leaving that way. And also the production processes, they produce so much waste. Just doing samples, just testing out if you want to wear your neckline a little bit lower, a little bit higher. Already for that, you need another sample, right? So
it is.
Yeah, that for me makes a lot easier for me to be like, yes, I want to work for that too. Like, that's
and you know the part that I love about it, because I'm also fully online. The sustainability is really what's driving me to do even the series here. This is educating the people, right? But the great part is what I really love is like when I was a designer, a physical designer, fashion designer, I was working. I was creating garments. You're trying to incorporate sustainable fabrics with the GOTS certificate. Those are these sustainable or organic cotton topics. But it always costed more. You had to invest and spend more money to do the right thing or a better product that's more sustainable. And with digital fashion, it's not, you don't have any trade-off. You can take all those benefits and do something good, and it doesn't cost you more. You'll save actually resources, and that's the super cool thing about this whole development that's happening now. And that's why we're also on this channel and pushing it and educating everyone, because it's actually a no-brainer. If you just look at all the pros behind it, it really is a no-brainer, but it's complex and you need to have the right people on board for sure.
It is complex, and you have to know how to teach people, or not teach, but like how to present that world to people, because obviously humans get scared very easily. And if you're not used to like storytelling, so I don't have a marketing major or anything, so I never learned what storytelling is and design thinking and those things. So you really have to learn that to be able to explain digital fashion to different groups of people, right? Because you have to explain it differently to the marketing department, because they all of that they care is numbers, so they just want to know numbers. And then you have the designers that only want to design like faster, and then you have the pattern makers. Yeah, exactly. Like a nice interface, which is quite difficult in the Web3 world, because they're all focused on the back end of the technology. And then the pattern makers, they want to actually be able to do the patterns in a fast way, right? So it's quite important to learn how to present the world to those people without making them scared of it. Like AI is a very good example, right? Because everyone now is like freaking out. They're like, I'm going to lose my job.
Exciting and scary.
Anymore. Yeah. So.
But it's understandable. And you know, this transformation business is 100% a people business. People think it's about technology or having the right process. No, it's about having the right people on board, having the right team on board, the right knowledge, but it's also about being transparent, communicating it, right? And you want to bring the people along the journey. They want to know what this means for them and their job. What effect is it going to have? And if you're able to communicate that and to pick them up there and not have them like guessing, because that's where the fear comes up, right? So I love it that you brought that up. Very good.
Yeah, that's where the fear comes up. And I mean, especially to AI, is that well, I will say especially designers, because that's obviously my field. So designers, photographers, those kind of people, they don't really see the worth in it, right? Like they don't appreciate that they are creative. Like to be creative is so special. Not everyone can do it.
Yeah.
So if you're not creative and you use AI, it's not going to work. You might be lucky for a few things, but you're going to see the difference. Like you have to have that design knowledge, or like that photography knowledge, how to set up the camera, the light, the videos, like all that knowledge you need for
that
AI.
Aesthetic feeling also.
Yes. So it's you're not going to replace humans. You just can't.
You're enhancing them. The best thing is a combination of both. But yeah, it's like we saw at PI Apparel where we were last just 2 weeks ago in Milan. It's okay not to have the answers too. Like we don't know how this is developing, and it's there's new things popping up every week, right? And it's okay not to have the answers. But having a fear of starting might not necessarily be the best approach, because you need to take, even if it's just baby steps, you need to start looking at it, engaging with it, and testing it in ways that are okay for your company or for you or every individual as well. Because you want to take the steps into that direction. You want to make sure you're not left behind, for sure. It's going to move really quickly, I think, the next years.
Yes, and be excited about the time we're in. Like we have the opportunity to be the first ones that actually do digital fashion. Yes, you have a personal assistant. Like how crazy is that? Because obviously AI, like governments, big companies, they're using AI for like a long time now. Like,
absolutely.
But now it's accessible for everyone. Like everyone can use it if they want to, which is quite great.
I think once you get a taste of writing content with ChatGPT, it's hard to step back from that. It's pretty nice.
Yes, I remember when we were in Italy, because I use it every day, right? And they didn't allow it in Italy anymore. So I entered on Friday, I think it was. I'm not sure which day, but I entered and I wanted to use it, and it was like ChatGPT is blocked in Italy, and I was like, what am I going to do now? You get used to it so quickly.
Yeah, it's like taking your phone away or something.
Yeah, or just like not driving with Google Earth. Like, can you imagine?
Yeah, without navigation.
It's just not possible anymore.
Absolutely. Okay, so maybe to end the session, maybe you guys can also already think about some questions that you want to ask Paola. maybe to end the session, we'd also love to hear. I mean, you're one of these new generations, also in a brand, supporting people that are just taking their first steps in that direction. And I think everyone would love to hear what you think is important for team leads and teams also to keep in mind when they're bringing in people like you. Like, from your perspective, what is something that you find really important when joining that team, for example, or any team? And or maybe also if you can think of any dream role that does not exist yet in a Web2 world, a job or a role that you maybe would like to fill in the future in your company. That would also be nice.
Well, to the last question, I do have an answer. It would be great to have, kind of, as I said before, like a coach or like someone like a mentor that would kind of walk around the company and actually introduce to everyone those themes and could take away the fear that everyone has, right? And to be like as a neutral person in between all the departments, because obviously if you are from the 3D department, you're not neutral anymore, and a different department might not feel comfortable talking to you about certain things if they are not, happy with the work you do, or if they are scared. Like, it's not really obvious to talk very openly to a department. So to have someone that supports everyone and kind of brings everyone together, that would be a great thing to have.
Someone who spreads the message, also takes care of fears, addresses questions that people have, just like the topics I just mentioned before. That's a really good one. It's like a mediator, coach, motivator slash everything.
Motivator. A motivator would be great. Like, someone would be like cheering digital fashion.
Yeah.
That would be
okay, awesome. That was really good. So we have a question here. Let me just bring it on.
Sure.
Hi, Paola and Marie. Any advice on finding ways to challenge yourself when learning 3D design, when not yet working in the industry? Are there any websites, communities you can recommend that stimulate, support, and motivate creative 3D skill growth? This monthly series motivates me for sure. Aw, thank you so much. So good to hear.
Welcome to the community. You can, I obviously invite you to join the Alana project. So we are a project that is for the community. We want to introduce the Web3 world to newbies. We want to make it safe for you to enter it without being afraid. I can always recommend the Fabricant. They have a very nice Discord community. They have meetings every Friday, I think, and they meet up and just discuss daily themes about your personal life, about books, and there are a lot of digital fashion designers there, so you can get in contact with them. So yeah, those things. Spatial is also a world that I really recommend. There are a lot of events there. Join, because you can only understand the metaverse if you experience it, if you feel it, if you enter those worlds, if you start developing your digital identity and start connecting with people. That's where you're going to understand what this is all about. Because if you only read about it, you're not going to get it. Like, I can explain to you the whole day, but you're not going to get it. So you really have to enter the social worlds and make connections, talk to the people, because we are all real. Like, we're not game characters. That's actually we are physical beings somewhere in the world. So
No, I love that. Like you said, the Alana project, shout out to Stella Assenbach. Keep up that amazing work. You're doing great. I love following her too. Actually, you introduced me to Stella, and she was also part of
that's where I met.
Exactly, the project that Emma brought up, who's also I'm a big fan of both of you guys. So. And also Fabricant's amazing too. So all very good points. I think with that answered, I think we can wrap things up for today. We had such a great conversation.
Yes, it was fun.
I just want to say a huge thank you for joining, because it's really important to me. This platform is not to bring only high ups on this show to talk about high level strategy topics. I love having this really good mix of inspirational thinkers that are having strategies, but also people that are, hands-on deck working and actually executing these strategies, all the way to this new generation of digital creators, which you represent. I'm just so glad to bring this mix in here and that you had the time to join us. And I'd love to have you back as well, like most of our, or all of our guests so far. They were all great. Yeah,
Nice.
big thanks to you, Paola.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And yeah, if you guys have any more questions, feel free to add them in the comments underneath this session, because since we're on LinkedIn, we can also still answer them. I'm sure Paola can get back to some of those questions as well. Sure. All right. With that said, yeah, enjoy your rest of your week. And I hope to see you guys soon next time.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.